Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really fascinating question. Can science actually tell us anything solid about mediumship and psychic abilities?
Yeah, it's a big one. We've been digging through quite a bit of parapsychology research.
Trying to get a clear picture, right? Not really to debunk or, fully endorse either way.
Exactly. Just exploring what the evidence looks like. And frankly, the challenge isn't even getting that evidence.
Okay, so let's clarify terms first. That seems crucial. Mediumship. That's about spirits' communication with the deceased, yeah.
Right. Purported communication. And then psychic abilities, or POSI. That's broader.
Broader how?
Well, it covers gaining information without the usual senses, ESP, or maybe influencing physical things mentally. That's PK, psychokinesis.
Gotcha. So like the old saying, all mediums are psychic, but not all psychics are mediums? That kind of fits.
Pretty much sums it up. You could have ESP without claiming spirit contact.
And this isn't exactly new thinking, is it?
Right.
Spiritualism in the 19th century really pushed seances.
Oh yeah, but beliefs like this go way back. What's maybe different now is this push to study it scientifically.
They're parapsychology.
But it's still super controversial, very debated.
And I can see why. Just defining it seems tough. The research we looked at really highlights that.
Totally. Mediumship, size, they mean different things to different people, even researchers sometimes. Makes rigorous science hard.
So how do they get around that? How do you test something so slippery?
Well, they try to use operational definitions, basically defining it in a way you can actually measure in a lab.
Okay, so instead of just mind reading.
Right, maybe it's accurately guessing a hidden card significantly above chance. It's specific, testable, limited maybe, but testable.
That makes sense. So what kinds of psi phenomena have they tried to test this way?
The research often splits it into two main buckets. ESP, extrasensory perception.
That's the information side.
Exactly. Telepathy, so mind to mind. Clairvoyance, knowing about distant things. Precognition, knowing the future, stuff like that.
Yeah, and the other bucket.
Psychokinesis, PK, mind over matter.
Like bending spoons.
Well, that's macro PK, large-scale effects.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's not much credible support there in the research we saw.
Okay.
Most of the PK research focuses on micro PK, tiny, subtle influences, like on random number generators. Yeah.
The RNG studies, yeah, heard of those. And they look at other stuff too, right?
Yeah.
Near-death experiences, channeling.
Yep, NDEs, OBEs, apparitions, psychic healing. The list is long.
Yeah.
But some are way easier to test in the lab than others.
Right. A controlled card-guessing task is one thing. Investigating a spontaneous ghost sighting, totally different challenge.
Precisely. And finding, say, a small effect in an RNG study doesn't automatically mean large-scale PK or spirit communication is real. You can't just lump it all together.
Okay, so how do they test these? What are the main methods?
Well, for ESP, you have those forced-choice tasks, like the old Zener cards. Statistically simple, but maybe not very real-world-like.
And the Gansfeld, that's the sensory deprivation one.
Yeah, reduce sensory noise, see if someone can pick up impressions from a target image or video. They've refined it over the years, the Gansfeld.
Remote viewing, too, describing distant places. That got some government funding back in the day, didn't it?
It did, yeah. There are meta-analyses suggesting effects there, too, though the older stuff faced criticism.
And for mediumship specifically?
They use protocols where the sitter, the person getting the reading, is blinded. They get multiple readings, only one intended for them, and see if they pick the right one above chance.
Interesting. And PK? Still the RNGs mostly.
RNGs are common for micro PK. Dice rolling experiments, too.
So what's the bottom line from all these different tests? Any smoking guns?
Not really smoking guns. What you see are meta-analyses, pooling lots of studies. For some paradigms, like Gansfeld and maybe remote viewing, they do show statistically significant results.
I sense a but.
But the effects are usually small, very small, and consistency is an issue. Some findings, like certain precognition results, haven't replicated well.
And the micro PK with the RNGs?
Again, meta-analyses show tiny, statistically significant effects, but they're heavily criticized. Concerns about publication bias, optional stopping, methodological artifacts.
So lots of potential problems. Is that why mainstream science is generally pretty skeptical, methodological issues?
That's a huge part of it. Concerns about proper randomization, sensory leakage, blinding, how data is analyzed, selective reporting. The replication crisis in psychology in general makes people extra cautious here.
Plus, aren't there non-cycle explanations people point to?
Oh, absolutely. Cognitive biases are big ones. Confirmation bias, wishful thinking, seeing patterns where none exist, the Barnum effect, accepting vague statements as specific.
And things like cold reading for mediums. making good guesses based on appearance, feedback.
Exactly. Or even hot reading, using secretly obtained information. Plus, just normal psychological factors, memory errors, sometimes outright fraud. The researchers try to control for that.
So it leads to this debate. Is parapsychology even science, or is it pseudoscience?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Critics point to the lack of reliable replication, the conflict with established physics, the lack of a good mechanism.
But proponents argue they are using scientific methods, publishing in journals, doing meta-analyses.
Right. It touches on the whole demarcation problem in philosophy of science. What separates science from non-science? It's not always clear-cut.
Which ties into proof, I guess. Science doesn't really prove things absolutely, it builds evidence. And replication is key.
Crucial. And for claims like psi, which seem to contradict known science, the bar is set very high. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
But what is extraordinary evidence? That's subjective too, right?
It is. Critics would say the small, inconsistent effects found so far don't meet that standard. Proponents might argue the consistency across different methods, even if effects are small, is extraordinary in itself.
So pulling it all together, where does the scientific consensus currently sit, broadly speaking?
Broadly, mainstream science generally finds that mediumship and psychic abilities, as defined and studied by parapsychology, aren't scientifically established.
Because of the concerns we've talked about. Evidence quality, replication, those small effects, alternative explanations.
Exactly. The interpretation of those small statistical blips, the methods, the potential for bias, the lack of a solid theory, it all contributes to the skepticism.
So what's next? More research, better methods.
That's the push. Even more rigorous designs, large-scale replication projects may be exploring factors that might influence results, developing better theories. If there's something there, that's how it would likely emerge more clearly.
So it leaves us in an interesting spot. Many people have experiences they feel they're psychic or connections with loved ones who've passed.
Deeply meaningful personal experiences, yeah.
But translating that into repeatable, scientifically validated evidence that convinces the broader scientific community, that seems to be where the real challenge lies.
It really does. It highlights that tension, between deeply felt personal belief or experience and the very strict, demanding process of scientific validation, especially for claims that seem to challenge our current understanding of the world. It's a tough gap to bridge.